Most of us are familiar with pioneering missions, entering a region and slowly overcoming geographic, cultural, and religious and linguistic barriers to bring the gospel to previously unreached people groups. Unreached meaning less than 2% of the evangelical population. The skills needed are linguistics, translation, and evangelism. Missionaries do their own thing. They set their own agenda, their own methods, their own targets. They model ministry for national leaders and then slowly transition ministries to them. Some Christians and some pastors feel that this is the only real missions there is. But when we look at the Apostle Paul, we see that he didn't finish in an area until a small congregation was formed, ideally having qualified leaders appointed. In some towns, he could use converted rabbis and synagogue leaders, but in the more Gentile cities, developing leaders took up to 2 years of intensive training. Think of the School of Tyrannus in Ephesus. Early church history also teaches us that others followed Paul in these cities, building up the churches. Men like Peter, Apollos, John, Timothy, and Titus, strengthening the churches and getting them reproducing. So when are American missionaries finished in a country? When leaders are reproducing leaders and the churches are reproducing churches at home and abroad, sending out their own missionaries overseas, cross-culturally. Therefore, in the final stages of missions in a country, American missionaries are training pastors and professors in local institutes and seminaries to correct doctrinal errors spreading in the church. They're drawing in national leaders to help set the agenda for the next steps in ministry. They're partnering in those new endeavors with expat national blended teams, and eventually they transition leadership to national professors who are not just reading theology, but writing theology. Well, why does this matter? Missionaries are wired and gifted differently. Some are scrappers. They're tough people of the earth who don't mind roughing it and patiently working with indigenous peoples. They may not be able to preach all that well, but they have a deep commitment to Christ and a drive to get the gospel where it's never been written or heard. They are the pioneers. But there are a few countries left in the world where pure pioneering is needed. The body of Christ has begun in most countries, and those churches desperately need our help in training and partnering with their leaders. Think of countries like Brazil or continents like Africa, where millions have professed Christ, but the prosperity gospel and animistic syncretism have all but destroyed the church. So when you look at the missionary potential of people in your church, split your evaluation to consider whether they'd be good for pioneering or whether they'd be good for partnering missions.